Good, good evening, everyone. Almost to say good morning. I'm very delighted to introduce Mr. Ming to all our students and parents tonight. Mr. Ming is our VC Math and Science Coordinator at Topscope College. He has been teaching secondary math more than 15 years. He is very familiar with all varieties of curriculums, including VCE, IB, GCE, and Cambridge system. More than 50% of his students have reached higher than 90% scores in their exams. So Mr. Ming is an excellent VC math teacher and teaching Year 12, Year 11 math methods and specialist math at Topscope College. He always provides additional solutions on top of method solutions, which are the shortcuts or smartest way to solve the problems quickly and efficiently. He possesses a unique combination of knowledge, passion, and teaching skills that inspire and empower the students. Based on the new curriculum design in math methods and specialist math, Mr. Ming will provide this seminar to guide students and our parents to understand further details about math course in VCE levels. Let us learn brilliant methods from Mr. Ming tonight about how to get the high standards in VCE math methods and specialist math in Year 12 SACs and final exams. Thank you. Then Mr. Ming is going to take turn.
Thanks, Olivia. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Right, my name is, you can call me just James, okay? So if you have any query along the way, and so during the seminar, if you have any like urgent questions, you can type into the chat box and then we'll be able to answer you afterwards, okay? So as you know, maths anywhere in the world is one of the most important subjects, I will say. And then it's also something which university and then those higher education institutions will be sought after for those who are very good, not only in the marks, but also in the form of their ability to grasp the concept and then make use of them. Maths is everywhere, as you know, and then not only in a particular field which are maths intensive, it's also even in law, maths becomes like something more important. So I'll say that very importantly, how are we going to make use of this maths to help to upgrade ourselves, not only just to get a high score, but to learn the sort of like life skills along the way. So today in my presentation, generally, I'll be looking at in a nutshell, how maths can be learned and how we are going to actually help the students in Topscope. Based on my experience, if I have to tell me my brief working experience and then teaching of maths and science, generally studied back from Singapore. I graduated with computer science from NTU. Then afterwards, I worked as a computer, based on the computer field for about 5 years before I did a mid-career switch to become a teacher, because teaching, as you know, is it's a kind of a mix of bitter and sweet, I will say. In the sense, when we see people growing up through the learning, so that is it's a kind of an enjoyment process. So the same thing, when you learn maths, you need to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, you will find it very difficult. And another thing for maths is kind of like a very cumulative in the sense, because it's in terms of the concept, they are intertwined. I mean, it's like starting from one base on to get the others. So during my presentations, or like trying to give you a certain informations, I'll be guiding you or like giving you some idea, and then from there, then we are going to bring how are we going to do in a practical way. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so I think probably I will start from the beginning. Can you see it? Wait, let me close this so that it's easier. Right. Okay. First of all, let me put this. It's a little bit okay. Right. Let me start talking about very common subjects that everyone takes. Maths method. I believe if you are already in year 10 and then if you're starting to expose to it, you will see is sort of like a foundation maths when you go over to the higher educations. So the key point is that it is the basic foundations for us to be able to learn from, especially concept and techniques. Even though they say methods, the more important points, as you have to notice, is about concept and techniques. So these are the two most important fields. And those concepts and techniques will be able to help you to further into a different area like engineering. We can actually go into a physical science. Not only that, business field like economics, computer science, environmental science, actuarial science, and then operation research. So these are, I will say that based on my main research, this is the area that I have, but of course, this is not the exhaustive list. Of course, methods course will be looking at the three main things as well in terms of the skill set: critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical skills. So I'm going to look at in my presentations, we are going to look at what are the way that we can use to learn, so that it will be able to support, okay, our learners will be able to be supported in that particular area. Okay, let's look at in general how we can learn maths. And this is based on my area of experience, as well as the area of the research. And of course, based on the practical aspect that we have learned along the way. Okay, first of all, maths need to be learned in a systematic approach, whether it is methods or special limits systematic, in the sense that if you starting from like reading a questions, from the reading of the questions, trying to get like keywords, an important point to take away any unnecessary stuff like sort of like shell stuff, and of course in a consistent practice, because it's a very structured way of approach that we have to do. So in our lessons is also going to be in similar manner, because your approach needs to be in systematic way. And we need to do like a consistent practice along this, so that in the exams, actually, it will be able to help you to achieve in the shortest possible time. Then secondly is you need to have a clear roadmap. If you don't have a clear roadmap, and then the way that we are going to teach or like learn maths, it will be very difficult. First of all, okay, let's say if you started learning algebra first, then afterwards you go into circles, geometry, then coming back to trigonometry, then going over to probability. If you do this, then you will get messed up, not only because of that, it's a different concept, because these concepts are not linked together. As the research say, human brains normally is linked to their previous learning, and their previous learning should not be learned in a very long time. If you are asked you to recall like something that it has happened to you maybe a week ago, you may barely remember for most of you. I mean, it's not. So in this case, what we need to do is we need to have a progressively linked to what they have learned. So in our learning of maths, we really have to have a clear roadmap that will help you to build whatever that you have learned before and what is you're going to learn next. And that next will also be a foundation step for the next. So we need to look into this. How are we going to approach? That's a better way, or I will say it's a more efficient way and effective way of learning it. And thirdly, reviewing is very important. You need to review. So of course, we will give you homeworks and then classwork to review this. Reviewing will also be helped if you are going deeper. Of course, when you take notes and then review yourself, that will also be able to help your understanding. Next, problem solving skills. So of course, practice is very important maths, right? So here we are going to use a lot of practice, but not only from the practice, from the textbook, you need to look into how are we going to approach the problem from a variety of different kinds of problems. So when we do this, normally, by looking at, because you will be going into the new study design, from the sort of like the samples questions that has been provided by Vicar, the way that the approach is a little bit more like intensive in going into one particular directions. So they will add different components into the same problems. So by looking at the same issue or the same concept with different angles. So when we learn in class, we are also going to do in the similar way. Approach the same concept in a different manner. Okay, so that will help you not only to learn, grasp the concept, that will be able to build for the future learning, and also important for us to finish things in speed and accuracy, so which is required in your exams. And most importantly, you need to clarify your doubt, whatever that you have in the class. So we will be looking into a more conversations-based classroom in which students and teacher will be able to interact more freely, and then it's able to clear. So when you are trying to clarify the doubt, the most important thing is the assessment. So what I believe is that having like assessment within the class, not just after as a form of test, to help the students for the teachers to be able to probe what are their students' understanding and their misunderstanding. Because if you don't clear on the spot, it will be very difficult to do. So when you're learning maths, do not hesitate to sort of like clear the doubts quickly. Then the other things is, of course, we need to have like different perspectives on the topics, and then challenge yourself. So again, this will lead to having a variety of different approaches into the topics and then do them in the class. Again, okay, consistency. Yeah, right. This is very important. Consistency is very important. So because if you don't do it, it will actually will not be able to serve the purpose. Even though I mentioned this is how will you learn maths, it also apply to other area. Question nature is again the second, or let's say maybe the third most important. The nature of the questions, is it going to be from the aspect of getting a shortcut, get the answers and done, or is it like the walking and then whether they are talking, whether they are looking at the thought process? Okay, and then when we are practicing problems, we need to review the mistake thoroughly, which is going to be done again as the follow-up process, so that you understand where you get wrong. And then when you get wrong, then it's able to be rectify them. Then discussion in the class is very important, okay, so that we can actually share what kind of a problem solving approach that we are going to make use in the real solving of the problem. Yeah, okay, this one is again teaching. Okay, what I'm trying to say, teaching is if you want to master something, you need to be able to help your friends or like family members. You maybe your parents may not be free to do that. Okay, maybe you try to discuss with your peers, you try to explain the concept. So in our class, that's also important. We will ask you to share your thoughts and then explain the concept that will be able to reinforce your understanding. And second last, what we look at learning mathematics is a progressive process. That's because progressive in the sense that we build the concept upon another concept. So our lesson approach will be later on. I will explain a little bit more details about this, how it's going to be in progressive way. And most importantly, that you need to have a persistent, positive attitude towards the study. So this is a general idea. If you want to achieve good grades, not only in grades, to grasp the good concepts. Okay, so in mathematics, these are the key points that to keep in mind. And in our lessons in Top Scores, this is where our values are being instilled in terms of the teaching and learning of mathematics. So these key points and then these key criteria will be put into practice so that we will be able to help you. All right, so that is about in general. Of course, exams are still very far, but it's just for you to give a particular understanding. So in this case, fundamentals are very important, okay? So what we are going to do is we start from the foundation concepts. For us to be able to grasp foundation concepts in maths, trying them out without using, okay, of course, using calculator and then finish up the things to get the answer. That is one way. That's fine. I mean, in maybe in real world, maybe you don't have a time, but gradually walking through the different steps without the help of the calculator, or it's like without the help of the technology, can actually bring you quite a lot of a new understanding. So the lesson approach will be based on grasping this foundation concept with through those like writing down, think through it, then that will be able to help you because fundamentals are very important. Okay. Of course, real world applications. Nowadays, it's like most of the exams are focusing on the real world applications, and getting familiarized with these questions types will be able to help you. Again, practice, practice, practice. Of course, it's like, oh, what we are going to do here is to expose to the different kinds of the questions, okay, different practice problems. If from the same concept, then we not only from the local, maybe also from the international examinations, of also from the other states. Time management. Importantly, time management. So when we do practice here, time management is very important. Under time conditions, that's what we should do. Then analysis of question pattern, which we are going to do it and then help you to expose to those question patterns. Okay, those question patterns, commonly occurring question patterns, and then commonly asked topics. Then most importantly, again, marking scheme. This is very important for those who are especially whether you are attending for SEC or it is for the real examination. When you are trying to look at the questions and then maybe the answer key, looking at the answer key, of course, gives you a certain idea, but able to know which steps are crucial. So in our lessons, here, we are going to focus along the way when you do the practice, because these are the area where they will be testing or they will be looking whether you have learned a certain concept or not. Because these are sometimes you can skip some of the steps, but there are crucial points which you can't skip. If you skip either, if you make mistake later on, you will have a problem because In the exam, they have two types of marks. One is called what we call it method marks, and then answer mark, or rather accuracy mark. Method marks is for them to look at whether the way that you approach or like the way that you have walked out is whether it's conformed to the mathematical concept. And if you make mistake in that particular area, even though your answer is correct, probably because of your use of technology or in one way or the other, then you will not get the mark for that whole thing. So that's an important, crucial point that able to understand and then find out where are their main problems. And we can also learn from the past mistakes, in which we know what are the common mistakes that people will do. Then, of course, again, feedback is important. We will value the feedback in all our classes in top scope. We want to establish a good feedback systems, not only from the teachers, from the students as well. Because if you are able to understand where your problems are, and also we will be focusing very much on giving a feedback to the students. And it's timely feedback, of course, that is very important. If you have a timely feedback to the students, and having that timely feedback will be able to help the students. Visualization is also important because we see syllabus, or rather in Australia, most they very much focus on the functions and graphs. Understanding of those functions and graphs is able to visualize them, and then having to be able to understand the steps to reach from the first point to the final point is very important as well. So we will focus in our lessons as well to be able to visualize the steps, not just to get the final answer. And again, which will also be able to boils down to another points called the thought process. How are we going to think? Given the problems, it is not very easy in the exam, especially when the question is quite wordy, and then when you have integrated concepts to be solved, then we need to actually think through where are the starting point, how are we going to break down these questions, then afterwards, how are we going to solve the problem. That will be able to help you to, okay, generally talk about in the examinations, okay? Right. So in this concept, all right. So if we are going to look at what we call it thought process in terms of maybe let me share one thing about this. All right. If you are, this is okay. It's sample questions for the new study design. I would think that this is a examination one. Maybe let's look at in the examinations two, where we have a little bit of a more complicated problems. All right. Okay, if you look at this, this kind of questions, this is something that I would say that it's not very new to year 10 students. This area, okay, if you look at this particular questions, so if you look at this area, this is the graph that is given here, right? So if you look at this is a graph. So this graph, even if you look at here, it's like the maximum power is like x to the power 5. Then what we want to do is we want to approximate, okay, using what we call it a trapezium rule. So then my question is that they have given you this particular equations, but is this particular equations really useful? Okay. And then where are you going to use this value? That is important. And then also it's given this, what we call it domain. So domain is like from the first one to the last one. And we look at how many intervals that we have done it. Of course, this is a multiple choice questions. you have to do it very fast. Of course, this is a technological-based questions, so that means you can use your calculator. All right, then we need to know where are we going to use this function. So trapezium rule is in such a way that you need to find this area. As you know that in trapezium area, so we need to recall, okay, trapezium rule, we need to use a trapezium area. What is the trapezium area? Trapezium area require for you to understand those, what we call it, this site, this particular heights are important, rather the sites. And then as well as this intervals are important. But these intervals, okay, could be, since it is a common, so we can take it out. And as you know that it is going to be what we call it half times like the sum of this area, then it's going to be times with height. Height is the same, so I can actually sort of like take out as a common. So we know that it is being taken as a common. Then what we need to do is, okay, now I want, of course, it's going to be, if you take out this h, okay, and then what you're going to do is we have to add this height, and because this one is going to be sort of like adding twice, okay, so you will have a 4 here. Then how are we going to find these values here? These values, of course, will have to be put into these equations. So you can find this individual height. Okay, let's say 1, put into 1. And you know that it's going to be appear twice and twice and twice here. So you can just multiply with 2 and then see which one is equivalent to these values here. Okay, and also here we can also, because the answer given could be also like jumble out front and back. So for you to be able to get it correctly, the substitution part and then times 2, check which one of it's going to be equivalent to this. So again, rather than like going through step one by one, firstly, quickly, you need to recognize that you have to find the height. How do you find the height? Then you have to substitute it into this. Okay, so this is generally how we can approach. This is like a typical question. Yeah, for your information, we will have those pseudocodes coming in. People are talking about pseudocodes quite badly about this, but I believe that they are trying to build what we call it logical thinking skills. That logical thinking skills is going to help you to understand better. If you go over to, for example, like question 1, let me see. This could be a little bit tough for you. Okay. Okay, as you can see, currently in the new design, they are looking at the way peoples to be able to get like logical reasoning as well as approximations. This is the area that they are putting in more details and then in the exams as well. Okay, if you are looking at, for example, like these questions, okay, what they are trying to say is to build up, okay, of course, initial informations are for you to give a scenario, but what is the key important point? Of course, key important point is here. Okay, they mentioned that 0 to 5 interval is 4D. So from here, you need to recognize that, okay, of course, this is a horizontal line because you have a 40 here. Okay, up to which point? Up to 5. So if I have to find like the area, then you don't really need to find from here all the way to there, then you know that this is going to be a constant. So these are sort of the key points. And the second part is a cubic functions. So they give you that the rest is like a cubic function. And also again, you see here where you have an intersection here, where you have its meeting. So that means this value is when this function becomes 0. That also tells you a certain scenario about this. Then when we try to approach these questions, it may be a little bit some of the questions may not be able to give you any idea about this, but what we are going to look at is not only from the same concept. When we think about approaching the questions, it is important to bring everything together. Okay, so that it's a kind of a type of the questions that we can expect in the exam. All right, the next part, I'll be going back to take a look. Is generally for your school assessment coursework. Okay, school assessment coursework. Because this, for your case, is going to be 40%. Yeah, it's still 40%. So generally is quite important. And each of the SAC will be, you will be told what are the assessment criteria. The first three, okay, normally they will have about 8, okay? 8, some of them will be take home, kind of a take home assessment where the percentage of contribution is small. A certain like higher percentage one will be done in school. Out of 8, there will be a 1 investigations, which is like a practical, trying asks you to create, do a small research and then ask you to prepare either a presentations or like a kind of a proof that you have to do. Other than that, the rest will be normally exams and tests. But even for the exams and tests, you need to understand the assessment criteria. Normally, school will give you what are the criteria they are looking for, which is mainly the topic, the level, the difficulty, and how are we going to do it. So normally I will recommend all of you, well, as soon as you get information from the school, what are your SEC structure, then you should be able to let us know so that we are able to have keep in mind, so that we'll be able to help you in advance in the sense. Okay. What they are looking for, of course, test, the way that they are looking for will be the exam standards answer. So exam standard answer, what are the exam standard answers that we should be able to provide? Then, of course, notes is again very important. A particular well-organized notes with key points to highlight. This is also important because normally they will be able to let you bring a note sheet, okay, for you to do it. Of course, nothing much different, since for the mathematics is this one will be slightly different for other subject, which is a science. Okay, in science, science approaches, SEC structure is different from maths. Maths mainly is for what we call it test base. Okay, test base. So in terms of the suggestions, or like maybe my recommendations will be quite similar. Okay, so as I mentioned, practice and review regularly and study in small chunks progressively. This one we will help with within our lessons. Okay, because I'm going to explain a little bit later how we're going to structure the lessons. Okay, now methods and special meds. I'll say I'm not going to sort of like give you a very details about what is going to be together, learning together. But what we are going to do is what will happen if you are studying both methods and special meds together. If you do this, there are some benefits. If you have if you are more strongly towards the maths-based subject, that will be good, because they reinforce each other. We can build idea on top of each other, so it's going to be about 30% of them. Yeah, about 30% of them there's overlaps. and which will help you to reduce rather than having like a new subject, totally a new subject. This will help you to reduce your study loads lesser. But of course, having said that, it doesn't mean that special maths will be equivalent in terms of the study loads compared to the other subjects. Special maths is a more in-depth subject that require for you to go deeper understanding. But as I mentioned, it will help each other. Okay, so and then also when you're choosing university and future career, it's more flexible. And second part is very important, complementary concept. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Yeah, they will complement each other, accelerate the learning of both subjects. Okay, which in our case, we can actually start together. You don't really need to wait. But if you have a plan, okay, because we have students who are doing methods and then special together. It is not necessarily that you have to do it like 1 year later, but in school, if you are being recommended this way, it's by all means, it's fine. But we are able to do it without waiting for that. Okay, so it's if you are willing to do it, that's fine. The most important thing is the logical reasoning and structured thinking, which now become important for both methods and special. And yeah, of course, scores. And then a test score is very important for all of you. That's our sort of like a short-term ultimate objective. Because as you know, special maths will have a higher scaling factor to compare with the other some of the common subjects. There will be a much better in terms of the ranking as well as the scaling factor is high, so your ATE overall score will be improved. So although it's somehow it will be able to help each other. So it's just trying to share you a little bit more about what are the sort of like added advantage other than learning a new in-depth concepts. These two mixed will be able to help you to do better in the overall score. All right. This part is just overview of what are you going to be seeing in the new syllabus in the sense for the maths method. So of course, we'll be looking at the functions and algebra in functions. Generally, even though when I say the polynomial, this particular polynomial, they will go up to like power 4. The exponential and logarithmic functions. And most importantly, the first part of the functions, okay, in unit 1, 2, we'll be focusing to introducing them. But in the actual exams, we'll be looking at the second part where the analyzing of those properties. Okay, so this analyzing of these properties are important. These parts are important here. Okay, transforming their properties in the sense that what kind of information that you can extract from there. In algebra, of course, solving systems of equation, this second part, as well as the inequalities are the most important key concept that will be tested in the exams. As for the trigo, generally they will look into the application of this trigo in geometry and physics because trigo is more apply-based topics. So the exams will be focusing on the application of them. For the calculus, which is about differentiation, integrations, I think the next part will be focusing a little bit more for this. Yeah, right. Later on, I'll put in a little bit more about this. Probably in statistics, we'll be looking at, of course, binomial, normal, and then descriptive statistics. Okay. Then logarithmic exponential functions, because it is based on the nature. Logarithmic exponential function will be the one of the common functions that they will be asking, especially when we are looking at applying them into a different area in science. Applications, we are going to look at like rate of change optimization, which is a very popular topics that they will ask into a real world scenario. Then we are going to look at like area under the curve. And then numerical method is something just now I mentioned about this using trapezium rules to find it. So as you can see, this is something last time used to be not very focused. Now they are focusing more into these numerical methods. Because as you know that even though we can apply the maths in a very strict way or like strategic way, more and more approximations and able to apply in a day-to-day basis become more important. So that are the area that you will be learning in maths method. Briefly about special maths. What I am going to talk about is the additional points other than maths methods is going to be included for the special maths. These are the area. On top of learning normal like calculus method, we are going over to this implicit parametric equations in the more complex shapes, finding the area and volume of more complex shape. Then vectors, matrices and vector. So this is another topic, especially matrices and vector will be useful if you are going over to engineering and computer science courses. Matrix is very important. So having these foundation will help you in the university course. Of course, differential equations is more on anyone who is going over to science top science courses. This is the area where the measure quantity could be used to convert it back into the mathematical equations. So this is the part if you are going to engineering as well as the science, differential equations are important. Statistical inferencing, going over to business and economics, of course, then logics and proof, combinatorics and graph theory. These are the two more heavily topics that are coming in the specimens. Of course, graph theory is important in computer science. Combinatorics a little bit, yes, and then graph theory is more important. All right, so that's about a general idea what kind of a topic that you will be learning in this. All right, now having said everything, I want to actually round up what are the key points and how you are going to be helped here. Okay, our main key points, what we call it here will be called in-depth and cumulative learning. This particular learning concept is, even though it is not new, it's the way that it's being practiced become more and more successful, which means that we will not be, as I mentioned, jumping around the topic, but we'll be going from for one particular concept. For example, if I'm going to learn about functions and graphs. So this functions and graph includes polynomial functions. It will include cubic functions. It will include logarithm functions, trigonometrical functions, exponential functions. So you're going to learn all these things together in one continuous period of time. And you will be learning that content from unit 1 all the way to unit 4, which means that you will be exposing in depth into it. Along the way, that will help us to be able to expose you with more deeper problems. In the meantime, then your preparation for it will be much better. Doing this will also help you in your SAC when it's come to unit 3 and 4, because you are being exposed and then practice in advance, and your ability to solve those things in tests in school will be much better. So that is what we want to actually start it off with. What I'll say that it's in-depth and cumulative learning. And real exam questions can be given in advance early in the learning stage, because the more you are familiar with them in the early stage, that will be better for you, because it's like when you know how to eat because you have started eating from like 1 year old. because it's the same thing. If you do it something in advance, like early in the learning stage, and then if you are used to it, it will help you. In the meantime, what we are going to do is we will have intensive tracking of students' level for each area of assessment. It is also easier for us to track because we know that you've done and at this point in all the weak area. So we use a kind of an itemized analysis in our assessments to be able to give you idea where your main weaknesses are. The next points that we are going to focus is a concept building. Okay, and then concept building is, as you know, it's very important process. Then that concept building can be done through the teaching, as well as the assessment, and as well as the way that you are going to contribute in solving the problems. We want to focus on beyond those memorizing. We want you to understand how these particular problems have been solved, how they have been derived, and how they are linked. The most important thing is how a particular concept is linked to the another. That can only be done if we are going to combine everything together in the same area. Then you also have a better and bigger and like a bigger picture in your mind. So the problems are approached in this manner. So that is going to be very important point. So as long as you know the mathematical principles and then relationship within them, then that's will help you to be able to solve the problem much faster. All right. Everything to sum up, we are in the teaching approach. We are going to start with a concrete example, visual representation if necessary. We'll encourage questions and discussions in the classes. We'll give you a different problem-solving approach. Then we also going to connect the concept with the prior knowledge, which is important. Then multiple perspective, not only that it's my only solutions, we'll also try to get from you. Of course, use of the technology is also important, hands-on activity. And eventually it's about gradual progression and cumulative review and practice, which is a very important. All right. So, so that is a general approach that we are going to have in trying to tackle. Of course, it's not the one stage of our life to achieve a high score in exams. In the meantime, grasp the concept, which can be used for your further study, right? So yeah, that's generally what I want to actually discuss and then explain to you. Yeah. Do you have any questions? You can type into the chat if you have any, I mean, it may not be relevant to my presentations. Do you have any questions regarding methods as well as the special maths and the learning of it?
Maybe can I start asking questions?
Sure.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. Maybe not quite related to professional levels, but for math methods, what kind of, when the students come into the unit, what kind of majors they are required students has to learn methods compulsory as one of the compulsory subject?
In terms of, okay, I will say that of course, it's engineering and science. These are the main area. But not only that, method has a foundation that will be able to help in a medical field, because it's especially in medical field, you nowadays you need calculus now. And then again, even if I have to say that if you really go into a medical field, which require like what we call it bioengineering, then you will need special maths, where you have a differential equations that will be helping, and then vectors will be helping you in some way or the other. because they want to actually look into the linkage, as far as I understand. So I'll say that methods is even if okay, if you are not going to use maths, and if you are only using it for the purpose of statistical and data analysis, which is more towards like banking area, then your further math is okay. But other than this, the rest of the course, I think having methods have added benefits to their further study. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's more about science and
Science,
engineer and medicine field they're
related
required.
subject, technology subjects, engineering
Yeah,
subjects. Yeah. So these are the,
great.
yeah.
Yes, good to know. And for the new curriculum about specialist math, it seems that changed a lot and added lots of different components compared to previous years. So do you recommend our students, maybe if they're capable to do maths, do you recommend they can do special?
As I have looked at this, you need to love maths. First of all, okay, methods is, I'll say that whether you love maths or not, you should do. But for you to do special, you need to love maths. That means you need to see how things are being developed rather than just apply it. So if you want to know, if you want to be good in special, you should not be shy. You can't like shy away from like derivations, like derive from what you know to the new concept, because that deriving from what you know to the new concept, able to see the process of a development that will able to help you to do in your logical reasoning, which is the major component in the special maths, and then proof become a little bit more intensive there. So if you love maths and want to see maths being like develop their concept along the way, then special maths is good. Of course, I will say that if you are not very into it, of course, it will be a bit daunting for you. And it also includes a little bit more about coding, not coding, it's a pseudocodes, where if you are going over to computer science field, that's a very good course that you can actually look into.
Oh, great. I think my base is start choosing or selecting the subjects. Maybe I was on the side of parents who are currently year 10 or year 9 stage. Mm. I think we may got some confusion that why should I do that or should I not do that?
Um, I would say that if you really have to, or rather that comparing other subjects based on the other, if you don't have really like no other subjects that you really can go and depth into, it could be a good one if you love maths. Yeah, I'll say that it will be helpful in university maths. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Does our students or parents have any questions? If you do, maybe just type into the chat box. Oh, yes, that's very good question, Rohan. I think, yeah, we have so many different resource books, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we will have our own
Yeah. Okay.
text.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me explain about this. Yes. Okay. In terms of the books, I think what you are going to do most importantly is your school will tell you which books to be used, right? But currently, I think Cambridge is the ideal choice. But even for the Cambridge, if you look at just now, I was also looking at it. A particular area, the in terms of the lesson sequencing, is not very I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, of course, this is they have a big teams of people who are developing it. It's good in a way, but sometimes in terms of a collection of it, it's like lesson sequencing is a little bit odd. And for us, we will use our own. Of course, we will use our own books in the sense because our approach is slightly different from a normal, like the school is going to do. We are going to combine the topics in a progressive manner. So we'll have 5 different volumes, and then each volume will focusing on each main strands. Then it will be covering from the unit 1 to unit 4. So after you have done, then we will be able to include the past papers questions, because they will actually group based on those strands. If you have to think about a textbook on the one in the market, of course, the Cambridge is the ideal choice. Any other? Before you need to decide some things that yeah, whether I should take or I should not take, or whether I should take both.
I think take at least math method to give a try, so
Yeah.
that you can, if you couldn't handle that, you still can convert into general math, isn't it?
But I think, yeah, it's if you are willing to, yeah, of course, yeah, if you're willing to, it's not a very difficult subject, I would say. Unless it is not really required for you. Nowadays,
Or maybe just open another window to your life in the future.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
who knows what's going to happen. As you
that's
can
right.
see, that I've studied as a computer engineer, but now I'm become a teacher.
Great. All right, 8 o'clock already. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for everyone's time, and we're very lovely to enjoy the conversation and the seminar tonight. Thank you very much for Mr. Ming's seminar and all of information.